Trucker Dump, episode 190. In this week's show, I've got lots of truck stop news. I'll tell you the top 10 worst traffic bottlenecks in the U.S. We got a crap ton of new state traffic laws. The FMCSA is revamping the way it rates carriers for safety. I'll share tips to get you in and out of a way station quickly, and we'll talk about what your tires are trying to tell you. Also, there's a new AirBnb for trucks. Yes, trucks, not truckers. There's a new type of CB radio on the market. We'll discuss how new right to repair legislation is important, and a trucker gets arrested for eating muffins. And that's only part of the news. In the listener feedback segment, Andrew remembers our dearly departed friend Shannon Holden. Gordon joins the Trucker Dump Slack group. Dave finally figures out what the guy says in the feedback intro. Matt shares his driver training experience. And an ex-truck driving instructor calls me Toddles and offers his services to the podcast. You want to stay tuned for that. That'll about cover it, so let's get it.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers. Sorry for the cryptic little podcast last episode, but I had a couple of people write me and ask me what was going on. They were a little concerned because I seemed a little down in the mouth. No big deal, just had some personnel issues at work, some personality clashes, and I don't like that kind of thing, but sometimes things have to be done. So, yeah, I'm back to it. No big deal. The problem is not resolved, but I can do nothing more about it. So I'm just going to try to let it go and move on with my life. So if you're new to the show, I guess I should tell you who I am, the guy who's laying it all out in front of you. My name is Todd McCann. I've been a truck driver for 25 years. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, it'll be 26 in June because, well, 26 comes after 25. So I guess I'll make it 26 unless, I slide off in a ditch or something like that. You never know. But anyway, I've driven solo. I've driven team with the evil overlord, who is my wife and ex-co-driver. But I'm not just a driver. I like to claim myself as an author too. And I guess I can because I got a couple of ebooks out on the market. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. Trucking Life includes a 9.25 hour audiobook. If you're into hearing my voice for 9.25 hours, you sicko. But you can find both of those books at abouttruckdriving.com. I am still running that 50% off sale. So that's 2 books for $9.99. I will probably end that at the end of February. So jump in on that while you can. And if you want to buy the books individually or you just want to learn more about them, you can go to abouttruckdriving.com. There's a full length and description of what is in each book. And you can also, there's links to go to Amazon, to Apple Books, to Barnes & Noble, I think, Smashwords, some other ones on there. And you can buy them wherever you feel like it. Of course, that's full price for those books over there. The deal is only on my site, abouttruckdriving.com. Yeah, enough about that. So, hey, I hope the world is treating you okay, better than I was last week. Just a bad week in general, like I said. But, hey, I'm back to it. Not having a great week again, but that has more to do with the road trip, the miles, all that stuff. Went to haul some doubles today. They told me the guy in front of me passed on them. He just said he couldn't do them. They didn't question it, which, okay, whatever. They let him take a load, and then he asked me if I could do it. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And I went to hook them up, and my fifth wheel pins would not retract. And I'd had this problem before. It was in the shop for a few weeks. They said they fixed it. I'd got it out of the shop. It wasn't fixed, so I took it back. It was in there for another couple of weeks. It was finally fixed. I know it was fixed because I hauled a single pup, and I had to slide my fifth wheel for that, and it worked. Then last night I go to hook up, and it doesn't work again. And I cannot figure out why. I mess it with for 30 minutes. Nothing's working. So, I have to ask what they want me to do. Put both of those pups in dock doors, all the freight off there, and put it onto a 53-foot trailer and just take that. I'm like, oh, great. Well, thankfully, day shift was coming in at that time, and as a union worker, I am not allowed on the dock the same time the city guys are there because that is their work, and I'd be stealing their work. So I got to sit in the break room and get paid for it and work on editing this podcast. Yay! Todd gets the win. But anyway, it was still frustrating because when I got to where I was going, they had a good shop. So I took it in there and said, hey, my actuator's not working on this. I've had this problem before and it's not working. And he said, okay, well, hit the button. I hit the button and what happened? Popped right out. Yeah, I still don't know why. I was very disappointed, but these are mechanics. They've seen this problem hundreds of times where somebody brings a vehicle into them, says it's not working, but it works perfectly when they look at it. They were used to it. The guy patted me on the back and said, don't worry about it. Happens all the time. So watch, next time I go to haul a set of doubles, yeah, it probably won't work again. I'm guessing it was probably just because of the ice and snow, but I don't really get it because it was just as cold later on as it was when I was trying to hook them up. Regardless, I'm just going to try to let that go too and hope the rest of this week pans out better than the beginning of this week. And last night especially. Boy, what a nightmare of a night. I got 7 hours on the clock just sitting around and I drove like 180 miles. Thank God I'm union and I get paid for all those down miles or those down hours. Yikes. So anyway, enough about me. This is going to be one long show because, like I said, didn't do an episode last week and we got a lot to catch up on. So what say we just get started with the news? Well, it's that time of year again when you're going to start hearing lots of numbers like 1099 or W-2. Yeah, tax time. I just did my taxes this past weekend and I got to tell you, I was a little disappointed. I remember when all the Trump tax breaks went into effect that first year and the new standardized deduction was enabled. I had a really good return. Actually, I was surprised. I thought, well, this is great. And then COVID hit. And as you may or may not know, that all that stimulus money that you got was actually just an advance on your tax returns, just like a tax break. And, so I didn't see much of a return those couple of years when that was happening. But this year I thought, well, I didn't get a tax, I didn't get one of those stimulus checks this year, so it ought to be great. Well, it wasn't. Thanks to Missouri tax, I did come out a little bit in the black and the red. On the positive side. I don't remember which black or red. But anyway, I actually owed federal taxes, and I was not very happy about that. But, in the long and short of things, I only end up owing, I'm only about $47 in the hole. So I guess that's pretty good. I guess really the whole idea is not to give the government too much for your money throughout the year so they can play with it and do whatever they want with it. You just want to pay, you don't have enough coming out of your check each week to only cover the taxes that you will actually need to pay by the end of the year. So like I said, I was a little short, and part of that is probably because I don't have the business separate. It's just a sole proprietorship, and I don't really make enough money with this with this podcasting and book sales and stuff like that to justify like holding out extra taxes for that. I just include that in. But I had that going on back before COVID, and I was still got a good return. So I'm a little disappointed this year. But anyway, get to your taxes yet? Well, you got till April 18th this year. I believe that's the deadline. But anyway, let's get to the story with Commercial Carrier Journal. That's ccjdigital.com. And this is just a description of 1099 or W-2 drivers. We've heard that term a lot. We've had, I don't think I'm real big on that 1099 thing. That's a lease type of a situation. And, well, leases can be good or bad, as we've discovered, and as the government is looking into those because there's so much predatory action around the leasing part of that. But, this just kind of goes, this article goes into detail of, it's really from a fleet owner's perspective. Like, should I just hire employees and give them W-2s, or should I let drivers lease on and give them 1099s. But it does explain the difference between 1099 and a W-2. As the second paragraph in this article reads, the Cliff Notes version is W-2 drivers can get paid benefits and have less to worry about come tax season, whereas 1099 drivers can earn a little bit more money because of tax write-offs, and they have more control over how they run and distribute their money. Now that is the tricky part right there. With some of these lease deals, they're basically controlling your life. You may be leasing a truck from them, but they tell you how to run, where to run, what loads to pick up, and you don't have options to go outside of the company to get loads. And so all that's a little sketchy. And of course, that's why that whole AB5 thing popped up out in California, is they are questioning it too. So I've always been a little weird about the leasing, in trucking, and how it's right on the edge. I mean, are you a legitimate independent contractor if the company is controlling everything you do or not? It's a fine line. But, well, I guess all that's being decided in the AB5, and probably other states will be following suit with that, and we're just going to have to see how all of that goes. But anyway, I just wanted to point you to this article over here on cjdigital.com. So you can go over here if you have ever been curious about the difference between a 1099 driver and a W-2 driver. Nice article here, well written, easy to understand, no big technical terms or anything like that, but it explains it quite nicely. So head on over there and check out this article if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Link in the show notes, which of course can be found in your podcast app. You are using a podcast app, aren't you? Yeah. It'll be a button or swipe sideways or something like that. If you don't have a podcast app, if you're just listening on the website, you can just scroll right down and you'll see all these show notes right there, all the links to every one of these articles. But I would suggest, if you listen to podcasts at all, even one of them, get yourself a nice podcast app. They're so much better. Like, for instance, on my website, okay, you got the audio, but you can't fast forward or rewind 30 seconds, can you? Yeah, I could probably do something about that, but I'm pretty lazy and I'm probably not going to, because that is a built-in podcast player right there on my website. And it's just an audio player is all it is, really, not podcast player. I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, if you want a podcast player, go get one. There's some cheap ones and there's some free ones. So go check those out, whether that be on your app store for your iPhone or your Play Store on your Android phone. All right, enough about that. Let's move on to probably the biggest story we're going to talk about this week that will probably have very little impact on you. CDLLife.com tells us Travel Centers of America to be bought by BP for $1.3 billion. Wow. Okay, well, BP, of course, is British Petroleum. Is that what that stands for? Yeah, I think. So I like the idea that at least TA is being bought by an ally of the United States and not, a somewhat enemy like Venezuela. I think Venezuela owns Valero and maybe somebody else, but at least it's British Petroleum. I wonder how much this is actually going to change things. I don't know, honestly. Probably not at all. I know TA's been on this tear lately of, rebuilding stores and revamping them, but I'm assuming that's going to keep going. It just seems weird that, TA is like having all this, we're going to redo things, we're trying to make things better, and then all of a sudden they just sell. That's weird. Of course, this probably isn't all of a sudden. They've probably been in talks for this for months, but, they don't tell us this kind of thing. So anyway, there's not much more to this article other, because it hasn't actually gone through yet. It has to meet approval. But, I can't see why they wouldn't. I mean, why the government wouldn't let this happen. I mean, if they let, Pilot and Flying J combine and they were two huge ones, I can't imagine why this would be held up in any way. So anyway, just keep your eye on this. They're, talking about the future and everything. They want to, enable growth in like electric vehicle charging. They want more biofuels on site. They want the natural gas and later hydrogen. So it's pretty much what TA had planned on doing anyway. So I guess that just aligned with what British Petroleum wants to do, and they're buying them out. So there you have it. So I don't know if TAs will look any different, probably just a different gas station sign out in front. We will see. You know, speaking of TA, I was talking with the guys I work with on the phone the other night, and they mentioned there was a new TA Express in Norwood, Missouri, which is on US 60, heading from like Springfield, Missouri over to the Poplar Bluff area, or, you know, if you're on your way down to Memphis, that kind of a thing. I had no idea it was there, but next time I drove past there, sure enough, Norwood, Missouri, there it was. Boom. TA Express, as they're putting up a lot of more of those little expresses now. They're not little, but anyway, this is just another one. It's kind of out there in the middle of freaking nowhere, which is always nice that somebody would bother to build a truck stop out there. There is a lot of traffic on US 60, a lot of truck traffic. But boy, it is dead at night. We've got one run that goes halfway from Joplin to Nashville and meet another driver and return home. And boy, if you're going to get a bid, that's a good one to have because there's nobody out there. The only thing out there is deer and coyote. So anyway, now they do have a crispy, crunchy chicken and a Sbarro pizza in there. And it also has an Ozark Cafe. But, you know, if you're driving nights like me, I doubt those are open because, well, nothing's open at night. We all know that. So anyway, just be prepared. That's about 60 miles east of Springfield, Missouri. If you're ever on US 60, there is a place to park out there. Also, in related news, there is a Love's out there also, in case you didn't know. It's right where the 60-63 split. So where 60 goes off towards Sykeston and 63 goes off towards Memphis. There is a big old Love's out there now. And there's usually some truck parking available in there, just in case you're ever out that way. I found this one on landline.media, but if we go back over to cdllife.com, we learned that there is another TA opening in Georgia. This one is on a highway we don't talk about very often, Interstate 16. That's at exit 116 in Statesboro. This one's going to be fairly decent size for being a TA Express. You know, it's got 125 truck parking spaces, and it's got a Burger King in it. So, and look, a pet area. Those pet area thing is becoming a real big thing, isn't it? I bet that's really good for you pet owners. So anyway, a couple new truck stops for you. Found this one on cdllife.com. Truck stops, truck stops, truck stops. Yep. I told you in the opening of this episode that there would be lots of truck stop news, and well, here we go with another one. Found this one on cdllife.com. Iowa Quick Star is the top of ranking of 100 best truck stops in 2022. So this is an annual list of truck stops released by Trucker Path, the app. And of course, they're going by all of the driver ratings on these truck stops. And, because you can rate truck stops right there in the app. You can make reviews, all that kind of stuff. So they have compiled their list. They split it into 3 different categories. The first is all truck stops, and then they single out independent truck stops, and then they have one for chain truck stops. But the top of the list is Quick Star. That's quick with a K. That is in Davenport, Iowa. Ironically, I don't think I've ever been there. Wish they'd say where that was at. Now, if you've never heard of Quick Star, those are in Iowa. They have a sister, the same company is Quick Trip in Wisconsin, Minnesota, up in that area. And we always call this Quick Trip with a K because everybody knows about the Quick Trip with a Q. And that's actually why Quick Trip is able to be called that in some states, but in Iowa, they also have the QTs, the Quick Trips. So Quick Trip could not name theirs Quick Trip. They had to change the name, so they changed it to Quick Star. So, same place. I don't know if you cared about any of that, but, I just found that interesting that that's why they had to change the name on that. But those are the same places, and they are awesome truck stops. Great place to go get produce and stuff like that. They're almost like a little grocery store, and they have always got great deals on, like, really cheap sandwiches, things like that. They've actually opened up a new one. I don't know if it's on this list yet. It might not have made the cut because it's brand new and it is the largest quick trip in the U.S. and it is located on I-94, like heading up from Chicago up towards Milwaukee. Just once you get into Wisconsin, it is exit 340. And if you're looking for food that late at night, they've always got a fully stocked deli. They're one of the only quick trips that really stocks it. I mean, full. You can get like a full pizza in there at night. It's just sitting there waiting on you. Lots of different kinds of sandwiches. There's all kind of bakery items and things like that. Really good stuff. They've got great coffee too. Although maybe you shouldn't judge your coffee by me since I like foo-foo stuff. But they do have good foo-foo options. So I'm just going to run down a few of these. Number 2 would be Love's Travel Stop. That's in Moses Lake, Washington. Don't think I've ever been there. Don't think that was there when I was driving out there. Rainbow Truckers Lounge in West Wendover, Nevada. Burt's Travel Plaza in Wellsville, Kansas. Nope. Workman's Travel Center, Ozark. That's in Ozark, Arkansas. Boy, that's close to home, and I've never been there. Well, that's just a short list. There is a lot of different truck stops on here, but if you want to see what other truckers like as far as truck stops go, well, head on over here and check it out. They've got the whole list of 100 over here on cdllife.com. Now, I know some of you are wondering right now, hey, where's the Iowa 80 in that? It's the world's largest truck stop. You can get all kinds of junk in there. Well, that's true, but it was ranked 22. I was a little surprised at that. But hey, look right down here. Number 30 is the Big Apple Travel Center in Joplin, Missouri. How do you like that? That's a newer one, and they've got Indian food in there if you're interested in that, and I hear it's pretty good. I've never tried it because I'm not very adventurous, but go in there any time of day, and it smells like Indian food, and well, I hear it's really good. They're not open. The restaurant is not open all night, as typical. But, go check that one out. That's the Big Apple Travel Center, and that's at exit 13 on I-44 in Missouri. And hey, what do you know? Looks like I'm looking down through here, and the Love's Travel Stop in Neosho, Missouri, which is the town I grew up in, is number 44. Now, don't be creepy trying to guess my passwords and stuff, knowing that I went to Neosho High School. All right. Anyway, check out this full list, cdllife.com. Speaking with truck stop news, let's talk about Love's. Nope, don't drink. They haven't opened up a new store. Don't drink. That's a little drinking game for every time Love's opens a new location. Nope, this one is just an agreement with Daimler Trucks of North America. So they're adding special service for Freightliner vehicles at their Love's Truck Care in their Speedco locations, which, in case you didn't know, Speedco is owned by Love's. That happened a while back, but fairly recently. So you can get, your light mechanical stuff done, roadside warranty stuff. That's really what this comes down to is warranty stuff. They can, get certain recalls taken care of it there, things like that for Freightliners. I believe they also have an agreement with International, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think that one has been in place for quite a while. So now, more than likely, if you go in there with an International or a Freightliner, you're going to get some decent service at your Love's travel stops. I found this article on landline.media. So if you're interested in all the details on this one, head over to landline.media. And I think that's going to do it for Truck Stop Talk for the day. Maybe. We'll see. Onward. Hey, you know how everyone's always talking about truck parking nowadays? The shortage of it, the funding that goes into it, the legislation around it, trying to get that funding, all that stuff. Well, here is another possible solution. Now, we've talked about another company that was doing this, and I honestly don't remember the name of them. But what we're talking about here is basically, well, let me just read you the title of the article from overdriveonline.com. New site to reserve truck parking, something of an Airbnb network for facilities. So this new venture is called truckparkingclub.com. You might want to save that website in your phone somehow in case you ever need this. what this basically is if a person has real estate that they're not doing anything with, they can sign up for this website and they can rent these spaces out to trucks. So naturally, this is a small thing right now. They don't have a lot of ground covered, but, they talk about an owner operator in here who was able to, he was looking for someplace to park his flatbed in the Atlanta area, and he was doing some research online, and he found truckparkingclub.com, and he was able to secure a spot. He was even after hours, and he called them, reserved the spot with a credit card, and, the spot was available to him when he got there. Now, they say these spots run anywhere from $20 to $25 a night, also $200 to $300 monthly. Now, that is a bit pricey, especially the nightly price compared to, parking at a Flying J or Pilot or anything, TA with reserved parking. But if you're desperate, you're desperate. And if you're a business owner, you're an owner operator, you can write this kind of stuff off too. So, hey, if you need more tax breaks, go for the more expensive one. But this sounds like a neat option. It's another added benefit to it is if you do have space to rent, that you can just sign up for it. And if it proves not to be lucrative for you, or you don't like the fact that truckers are, throwing out pee bottles on your property, you can, just cancel. And within one day, no one will be allowed to park at your facility anymore. So, they say you can use almost any commercial property you have, like as long as it's zoned for, commercial, not just residential, unless you're, way out in the country somewhere, I take it. Anyway, this is a neat idea. I'd like to see more of these types of things take off, because the more of them that would take off, the cheaper these would become. The more competition they have, the cheaper it would be. And they could even compete against the places like, the reserved spots from all the major truck stops. So anyway, if you're interested in this, head on over to overdriveonline.com and check it out. Man, oh man, I don't know if the FMCSA is going on a tear when it comes to checking out all of these ELDs or what, but this is going to be the third one that's been revoked in just 2 weeks. The first one we heard about was called ELD 1, with 1 all spelled out. The second one was nationwide ELD. We talked about both of those. Both of those were added to the revoked list, and now they're adding another one called 1 plus ELD. So if you're using any of these devices, you're going to want to get in and get these taken care of now. Don't wait till the last minute. There is a grace period on these, but don't wait. Just give it up. If they haven't complied to the rules and fixed their ELDs when they were given the opportunity to, they're probably not going to bother. So, and why would you want to be with an ELD company that lets their software or their device get out of date and out of spec? You don't want that. These are, I don't know if you know it, but these logs are legal documents, and they can get you in a lot of trouble if they're doing things wrong. So make sure you get in and replace those. Go with a reputable ELD. Don't just buy something off the counter that you have never heard of. Do some research on these things, for Pete's sake. That's how you got in this position in the first place, buying an ELD that you probably never heard of, which honestly, I'd never heard of any of these. ELD 1, nationwide ELD, or 1 plus. Never heard of any of those. So anyway, check this one out, overdriveonline.com. You naughty, naughty ELD makers. Well, we talked about this next story a long time ago. Overdriveonline.com. Cobra unveils first line of FM-capable CB radios. Now, I don't know a thing about CB radios. I know less about radio signals. But the idea behind this is the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, opened FM bandwidth to CB radios. So, in general, that means that you're going to have a more clear sound, because right now CBs operate off of, what is it? AM and something else. I don't remember what it is. Upper sideband and lower sideband, whatever that is. So that's just the 40 channels. Well, and anybody who's listened to like music on the radio knows that AM usually sounds less clear. FM is way more clear, but of course the distance is less. So I'm going to be interested to see what kind of experience truckers have with this, because, I mean, if you can get someone really close up to sound really great, fine, but, I mean, does it use the AM at the same time? I don't know, and I'm probably never going to find out because I don't have a CB anymore. Well, I do, but it's buried somewhere in the attic, I think. But, hey, if you're into CB radios, be sure to check out one of these Cobras. They've got them in... Let's see, their best-selling models like the 29 LTD Classic, 29 LTD Chrome, the 19 Mini AM FM, and the 29 LTD NW, whatever that stands for, will be available later this spring. So if you have access to one of these and you're one of these radio nerds, please write in and tell me what your experience is about it. I'll even take an official review. That would be awesome. And you can reach out to me at truckerdump@gmail.com and just I'll give you all the details on how to go about doing that review if you're interested, or you can just kind of do something, off the cuff. Just talk right into your phone, into your voice memo app, and tell me what you think about this CB, what's cool about it, what's not cool about it, and all of that good junk. Okay? Check this one out at overdriveonline.com. There's your homework, you CB nerds. All right, recently we talked about the 10, I can't remember if it's 10 or 20, whatever the number was, but there was a list of worst traffic in the United States. Well, that was actually in the world. It was a survey for the world, but this one is over here on Commercial Carrier Journal, ccjdigital.com. This one is about the worst traffic in specifically the United States, and they're really talking about the top 100 most congested bottlenecks, which I guess if you're like me, you know what the top one is pretty much every year. The fifth year in a row, of course, it is the I-95 at the George Washington Bridge near New York City. That is a mess. It always has been. It probably always will be until they rebuild that bridge, which will be, well, not in my lifetime. The second one does not surprise me at all, too, because I have been there. I go through there quite a bit, and that's Chicago, I-294 at 290 and I-88. Chicago. Oh, boy. Number 3 doesn't surprise me at all either. Houston, I-45 at I-69. Yeah. This next one is kind of funny. Number 4 and number 5 are Atlanta. The first is on the north side, the intersection of I-285 and I-85. Yeah, that one's never fun. And on the west side, I-20 at I-285. Yeah, that's the one I'm experienced more often with the way I run is I-20 and 285. And yeah, boy, you hit that at the wrong time of the day and yep, you're screwed. Number 6 goes back to Chicago, I-290 at I-90. And there's a couple over here at L.A., State Highway 60 and State Highway 57 intersection. Boy, it's been a long time since I've been out there. I don't remember where that's at. And the second, Los Angeles, number 8 is I-710 at I-105. Number 9 comes in at Nashville, I-24 at I-40. And number 10 at San Bernardino, I-10 at I-15. That one doesn't surprise me either. And to finish up, let's give you a depressing little stat for you. The average truck speeds at rush hour were 36.3 miles per hour. Actually, that seems a little high from what I've experienced. It seems like you get, Atlanta, especially George Washington Bridge, you might as well you could almost go on duty yard move and get away with it under 20 mile an hour, or even go off duty and stay under 5. Not that I'm recommending that. I'm just saying that it might be possible. Depends on how close your company looks at your logbooks, I guess. So anyway, check this one out on ccjdigital.com. All right, this next story was brought to my attention by Stephen Gorman, who is a member of the Trucker Dump Slack group and also a past guest host for this podcast. He found this one on landline.media. U.S. DOT expected to take up automatic emergency braking in March. Yeah, we had talked about this before. They had issued, one of those advanced rulemaking things or whatever, saying, hey, we're going to be looking at this pretty hardcore sometime this year. Well, it looks like that time of the year is March. Now, not everyone is a fan of these emergency braking systems. As Steven said in the Trucker Dump Slack group, he says, I hope not. I have had my alarm go off while I was out in the middle of nowhere. No overpass, no guard railing, no puddle of water, just a sunny day on a straight highway. They need more improvement before they should be mandatory. I totally agree with you there, Steven. I have had this happen too. Thankfully, I'd rather have it happen on a dry road out in the middle of nowhere in the middle of daylight than I would in the middle of the night on snow and ice, because your sensor gets covered or something like that. That is not something you want the brakes locking up on you, because if you're driving a truck that does not have this feature yet, it is a jarring experience. I mean, it hits the brakes hard. I mean, the Jake comes on, and it slows you down real fast. And, if you're just kind of sitting back in the la-la land, just enjoying the scenery and enjoying the, your night's drive, it's going to surprise you. I got to tell you, it'll shock you. So anyway, I really hope they do figure out in this rulemaking that, hey, this needs to get better before we make it mandatory. So if you're interested in this one, check it out on landline.media, and thanks to Stephen for pointing it out. And just as Stephen did, if you have a story that you see that you'd like to hear talked about on the podcast and get your name shouted out there, send me the link to the story and give me a little comment about it, and send it off to truckerdump@gmail.com. All right, next up, we have yet another problem with all of these futuristic vehicles. And that is right to repair. Found this on overdriveonline.com. The title, Right to Repair Legislation to Cover Future Tech Reintroduced in Congress. So right to repair, of course, is just basically saying that if you are the owner of something, you have the right to be able to repair it on your own terms. So the whole idea behind this legislation is, so all of these autonomous and, all the fancy pants stuff on these new finagled trucks, the manufacturers just can't keep it private and say, well, if you want to get that fixed, you're going to have to bring it to us. This right to repair stuff is all about letting you choose where you want to get your work done. And this is especially important for truckers, I think, because they often find a mechanic that they get to know and they trust, and they form relationships over a long period of time. They always take their truck to this one person, and that one person always knows everything about their truck. They know the whole history of it, and that's very important. So this legislation is just designed to make sure that that can keep happening, and that these third-party repair shops will have all the tools, the parts, and all of the information to be able to work on these things themselves. Now, whether they want to tackle all this high-tech stuff is another thing. A mechanic who likes to turn wrenches may not really be interested in computer software. So, but it's still a person's right to be able to get that repaired wherever they like. So I think this is a good thing in general. If you're interested in this one, head on over to overdriveonline.com. All right. Recently, we talked about how the FMCSA decided that they were going to limit the ability to put emergency declarations on. They were limiting some states. Federal government was still going to have a bit more power on when they declared an state of emergency, but they were putting limitations on when states could do it. And, there's a couple articles over here on landline.media where there are a couple of organizations, including OIDA, which is the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association, and AASHTO, I guess is the way they pronounce it, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. Now, they're just asking why. Why is the FMCSA messing with this? Why are they even bothering to address it? Specifically, AASHTO is concerned with the proposal to reduce the initial 30-day period for regional emergencies to 5 days. They're saying that many regional emergencies are longer, and they don't really understand why there is a need to reduce this number from 30 days to 5 days. And OIDA is basically saying the same thing. And I always like how OIDA throws the FMCSA's own words back into their face. The quote here is, the agency has no information that suggests an existing emergency exemptions have negatively impacted road safety. End quote. And that is what the FMCSA is always saying, hey, you can't prove to us that it's whatever you're asking for an exemption for, something like that, is going to help safety, or it's not going to keep the equal amount of safety. Well, they're saying, well, why are you doing this? There's no indication that changing these the length of these emergencies and things like that is going to affect road safety. So why are you doing it all? I just, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Boy, we've got some weird sayings in the United States. Anyway, if you're more interested in the details on this one, head on over to either of these landline.media articles. I'll put both of them in the show notes. One of our favorite pastimes here at the Trucker Dump podcast is talking about electric vehicles and pointing out all the flaws in them. Yes, maybe that's going to be the wave of the future, but for now there are a lot of problems. And, well, here is yet another one. This one is over on overdriveonline.com. With growing EV adoption, car haulers call for higher weight limits. So there's a group called CEVT, Coalition for Electric Vehicle Transportation, and they said when Congress talked about these electric vehicles, they talked about lots of stuff, pretty much everything to do with electric vehicles, except for their actual transportation of those vehicles to the place where they're being sold. And the point of the matter here is electric vehicles are way heavier than their gas-powered cars. But because they're so heavy, these car haulers are saying they're only going to be able to carry, they're going to be reduced by about 28%. So I don't know what that figures out in car weight, but I'm guessing, if you were able to haul 8 cars before, 28%, well, I'm not good at math, but, you're welcome to do it. Suffice it to say you're going to be able to haul less cars than you were before. And, so it's going to take it's going to cost more money probably because they still want to get the same amount, for each shipment that they send. I don't need to know exactly how that works. Car haulers, you call me and tell me, do the people who own your trucks, do they get paid by the car, by the weight, or by the load? How's that work? Never really figured that out. Of course, I never really asked. So anyway, this is just one more thing that they got to worry about when it comes to electric vehicles. So we'll see if the FMCSA gives them an exemption. They are probably going to need one. So we'll see what they say as this goes forward. What's next? Okay, let's stick with landline.media. Idling rules considered in multiple states. Yeah, believe it or not, idling rules are still out there. I thought, setting the trucks at like 3 minutes or whatever most of them are set to nowadays would take care of this, but apparently that's not quite enough. Honestly, though, I don't know if the trucks idling, shutting off idling after 3 minutes, if that's controlled by the carrier. I'm assuming it is, because not all states are down at 3 minutes. Although Connecticut is, they've got a new House bill that would authorize a 3-minute idling period. So they're going for that. Of course, there are exceptions to some of these things, like if the temperature is below 20 degrees, if you need heat or cool for, and it's below 20 degrees. New Jersey is the next state they're talking about here that is looking at their idling laws again. Currently, you can't idle a car or a truck there for more than 3 minutes. But again, there are exceptions to this, so it's very important when you're in the state. Well, I say it's very important, but, I haven't been in New Jersey in quite a while, but back when I was there, they hardly ever enforced this. Every once in a while, they drive around and do like a little sting, basically, and, show up at some pilot or TA in New Jersey and, start issuing tickets for drivers who were idling their trucks. But in general, I think they pretty much just left you alone, especially when it was cold, because, cops are cool most of the time and they just understand we don't need to freeze. So thankfully, they don't really enforce these rules a lot in my experience. But hey, if you're out there a lot and that has changed, please write in and tell me. I'd be interested in that. truckerdump@gmail.com. But if you want to be safe, head on over here to this landline.media article because there are a lot of exceptions to when you can actually idle a truck. For instance, one exception authorizes diesel vehicles to idle up to 15 consecutive minutes when the vehicle has been stopped for at least 3 hours, implying you're on a break, and the temperature is below 25 degrees. So you can start up the truck, let it run for about 15 minutes, get it warm in there, and turn it back off again. Yeah, that really helps your sleep, doesn't it? Having to wake up every time the truck gets cold. Yeah. This right here is why APUs are so popular nowadays on trucks. There's also other exceptions like, the type of truck you have, where you're even parked, if it's in a residential or an industrial area, when you're stopped in traffic, or waiting for a vehicle inspection, being repaired, while your cargo refrigeration, while you're getting that fixed, for your engine power, they can leave it running if they need to longer to get it fixed, things like that. So there are a lot of exceptions here, but, there's always insanity along with these things. In New Jersey, I think they're kind of known for insanity. So why are they even on this list? They're already at 3 minutes, right? Well, they want to change that from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. Come on. How much of a difference is this going to make? 1 minute or less of idling. Oh, God. I guess every little bit adds up, but come on, good grief. I mean, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection goes on and says, quote, modern diesel vehicles do not need to keep engines running to properly function. They say idling produces ground level ozone and particulate pollution. These can create asthma attacks, wheezing, coughing, lung cancer, even premature death. Yeah, they could. Come on. Wow. Oh, boy. And, of course, whenever you talk about New Jersey, New York is almost right there with them. So right now, New York only limits idling for trucks. They have a 5 consecutive minute rule for any vehicle over 8,500 pounds. This new bill would add passenger vehicles to that too. And they would be changing from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. Ah, come on, New York. Why don't you just go all in and go 2 minutes? Good grief. So there you have it. I doubt any of you worry about this. Technically, every time you're getting ready to stop in a state and, idle for a while, you should probably look up these idling rules. But who is going to do that? Not me. There's sometimes some signs posted, but not often. So I guess, this is on you. I guess if you want to get a ticket, don't check it. If you want to take your chances, have at it. Landline.media for this one. All right, this next one I found on cdllife.com. You might want to be a little proactive on this one. New Mexico considers banning big rigs from the left lane. So as of right now, big trucks can be in the left lane in New Mexico, but they are saying if things keep the way they are, they will ban you from the left lane, basically meaning you will be basically like California rules, how they are. Like if there's a 2-lane highway, if there's 2 lanes going your direction on your side, you can only be in the right-hand lane. If there's 3 lanes, I think they say, the left lane have to stay clear and you can be in the left or the right 2 lanes. But we don't want to get to that point, do we? We don't need laws for this. Just the whole idea is to keep drivers out of the left-hand lane unless you're passing. If you're passing, get out there, get the job done. And this is where the podcast I did called Truckers Go Turtle Racing really comes into effect. If you are a driver, go listen to that episode. I believe it's episode 166. I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes on that one. That's all about when 2 speed limited trucks are trying to pass each other and how to handle it. In short, if you don't want to listen to the podcast, just if somebody's slightly faster than you and they're trying to get around you and it's taking a little while, but they are faster than you, just tap the brakes. 10 seconds, they'll be around you. Life will be back to normal. Your stress level will be way reduced, as will the driver who is trying to get around you as they're back there cussing because you won't let them around you, and they keep crawling up on your back end because they're faster than you. Just let them around. Really, people. So anyway, this law in New Mexico has popped up before, but it was vetoed. It got all the way up to the governor, but she vetoed it. So who knows? We will see. Maybe this time that changes. Personally, I wouldn't want to risk it. Just get in the left-hand lane, get around whatever you're trying to pass, and get back in the right lane. Don't be riding out there and screw it up for everybody. Okay? CDLlife.com. Man, oh man, these states are staying busy. Found this one on landline.media. Ticket camera rules addressed in at least 19 states. Now, I am not going to cover every single one of these states because, well, mainly I'm lazy and don't want to. And secondly, because you're never going to remember each one of these states, not 19 of them. If it was one state, you might remember that. If it's 19, you're never going to remember that. Besides, these rules are all over the place. I mean, they rank from the state currently doesn't have any cameras or any red light cameras or photo enforcement or anything like that, to saying, hey, we're going to implement it, to other ones saying we're going to implement it, but only in certain regions, to others, and only in work zones, and other ones have them now and are banning them completely. So it's just all over the map here. I'm just going to run through the states that are doing this. Arizona, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Like I say, these are all over the map when it comes to what they're doing, but this is a very, well, it looks like a really long article, but each one of these states has just very short rules in here. They really summarize this nicely. So if you're interested in what's happening in a state that you're in a lot, well, just head over here and check this one out, landline.media. Probably the best advice is just don't run red lights and don't speed, and you won't have to worry about any of this stuff, right? Okay. Also, I will point out on the new Garmin 810 that I am testing for Garmin, they have the red light camera enforcement in there. So you can enable that, and it will warn you when you're coming up on a red light camera. That is, if it has been reported to Garmin that there's one there. I don't know how Garmin gets that information, but I see it all the time. I'm driving along and it gives me a warning in advance. Red bar comes along the top, says, hey, red light camera ahead. It's like, cool. What's funny is I'm often on the interstate when that happens. So, I'm guessing it's the camera down off of an exit ramp or something like that. But regardless, hey, it knows I'm close to one, so beware. So anyway, like I said, go and check out this cool article that is very succinct and to the point at landline.media. Okay, found this next article on freightwaves.com. How you can prepare to ace a way station inspection. Okay, now if you're anything like me, you read this and think, okay, it's an article that says do your pre-trip inspections. Duh. Well, yeah, it does mention that in here, but that is not all the information. I was actually a little surprised at this article. It brings up some things I had not thought about before. Of course, they do mention the pre-trip inspection and keep your equipment, in tip-top shape and don't give them any excuses. But this article has some other helpful tips. For instance, one I found very useful was it says, you may be thinking about, if you get pulled into a way station, you may be thinking about getting your paperwork in order and everything, and you're just not using your common sense. But it says, one thing you should think about is just make sure you keep proper etiquette, that you're not, looking around in your cab for something while the officer is approaching you. Don't be grabbing for your registration and everything because the cop doesn't know what you're doing. He may think you're going for a gun. They're worried about that kind of stuff nowadays. So, they say something as simple as keeping your hands on the steering wheel until they approach, keeping your prescription glasses on if you have a glasses restriction, or keeping your seatbelt on so they can see you actually had it on. All great points, because most drivers, are probably going to get pulled over and they're going to pop their seatbelt off, they're going to start looking for their paperwork and everything, and they're not focused on the driver as they approach. Now, I'm not claiming to be some super trucker or something, but the last time I got pulled over, I actually had been thinking about this before, because they said I'd read an article about concealed carry and, that what cops are worried about, and, that they want to see where your hands are and everything. And I just put both my hands, I had cracked the window, or put the window down, and I put both my hands on the door, so he could just see where both my hands were as he approached. He didn't mention that or anything. He didn't say that I was a good boy or anything like that, or pat me on the head. But I just thought that was that's probably a little bit extreme. But, as long as they approach and you got both hands on the wheel or both hands are visible, just don't be rummaging around for crap. And speaking of rummaging around, you should know where all that stuff is. You should have all the documentation in one envelope or one folder or something. You know exactly where it's at, and you know that everything is up to date. I will admit, I sometimes lack on this. As a LTL driver, I am in and out of different trucks sometimes. If my truck breaks down, I'm not shut down for 3 days or whatever while they fix it. No, they just pop me in another truck and off I go. And sometimes I'm in a hurry and I forget to check that paperwork. And that is not a wise thing to do. Make sure all your permits are up to date. You should have a list of every permit that your company needs. If you don't have that, ask your company to provide you with one. So then if you get in a different vehicle, you can always just run down that list and check it. I have one of those lists that I keep handy, and it'd be nice if I actually ever remembered to use it. But hey, I'm telling you, we should all be watching out for that kind of stuff, because that can put you out of service. If you get stopped in the middle of the night and you don't have some kind of permit you need, or something is expired, the registration, you're not going anywhere until your company gets to work the next day. You call them and they get something faxed over, or maybe they got to set something up at the state and get something paid. It's a big pain in the butt. So just make sure you stay up to date on all that kind of stuff. They also say, of course, one big tip is just keep your dash clear. Don't have a bunch of potato chip wrappers and candy wrappers and, empty cups of Coke and stuff up there. You don't need that up there. Well, you don't need that in your truck at all. Get rid of it. It's filthy. It's unsanitary. But, don't have that up there visible for them to see when you're going through a weigh station. Another thing they just don't mention in here, but they should, is watch the way you're driving in these weigh stations. Now, I have a friend who always says, don't make eye contact. I don't know. He says, don't make eye contact with them. So I don't worry about that too much, but usually I'm focused on making sure all of my tires are on the scale, that I'm rolling across at the right speed. If it says wait until the truck clears the scale before you get on it, make sure you do that. If it says stop on the scale, make sure you do that. Never start and stop real fast. Don't take off, because that jerks their scale around and it pisses them off. They will pull you in for that. Don't brake hard on a scale. That will mess it up too. Those things are very sensitive devices and they don't need you screwing it up. So just be careful, crack your window. So in case they give you any verbal instructions, you can, hear them, and you don't have your window open. Take your headset off, for Pete's sake. I know it's legal nowadays, but just take it off. Don't give them any excuses. And certainly if you've got like earbuds or a big headset covering both ears, which is illegal, get that off your head before you go through there. Don't be a moron. And honestly, you probably ought to do that before you even get to the scales, because there, as we reported, I think it was Kentucky a while back, that they've actually got some cameras that are set up before you get to the scales. So, you're reaching down to take off your big old set of giant double ear headsets, and they've already seen you on the camera. You're busted. So just be careful. And that's another good feature of this Garmin 810 that I am testing, and it actually tells you when the weigh stations are coming up too, and way in advance. So you have plenty of time to be prepared for that. Now, another thing they suggested to get through a weigh station is just be prepared for all of the legal issues. You know, like for instance, if you owe child support or fines to a state or something like that, they're going to probably flag you for that when you go in there and they're running your license and everything. So make sure you're up to date on all that kind of stuff. And they also mentioned bringing any letters or paperwork from the state, for instance, a lot of times these states fail to report that you've got your DOT, that you reported your DOT physical to the state. And, they'll pull you over and say, hey, the state doesn't show you have a DOT physical registered with your state. And you whip out the paperwork that showed you paid the DMV the $2 to get that on your license. And if it's current, they go, oh, okay, well, it must be a glitch. Onward you go. But if you don't have that handy, you are, of course, screwed. And of course, the DOT physical itself, you must have that with you. Told a story about that recently, and thankfully I got out of that with no harm, no foul. So anyway, very interesting article. Not what I was expecting, much better. And there's more stuff in here. So please go and check this one out, freightwaves.com. Great article by Jenny Glasscock. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so weigh stations are obviously a way to catch bad carriers or trucks that need to go out of service, all that kind of stuff, maybe a driver who's done something wrong. And, well, that's an important thing, right? Well, another thing that's important for truck safety is the CSA. We've all heard about that, the Compliance Safety Accountability Program. That is where the FMCSA ranks carriers according to their crash data, how safe the carrier is, and all kinds of different levels. When it comes to, hazmat, driver violations, truck violations, all kinds of accident data, all kinds of different categories. Well, this next story I found on overdriveonline.com. FMCSA proposes long overdue CSA carrier safety measurement system revamp. Now, if you're as confused as me by that title, well, that's what you're going to get, just more confusion from listening to me talk about it, because I'm confused. I know what this is supposed to do. They're talking about how they're planning on revamping the whole CSA system and the way they measure things and the way they give scores. But this article is hard to read, almost impossible to understand, unless you're a brainiac, which I'm not. And I just don't know how to relate it to you. I feel like it's an important story, but I just don't know how to tell you. Lots of numbers in here, lots of little details about the scales and the way they register things from 1 to 10, and other things they rate either a 1 or a 2, and it's just super freaking confusing. So, and honestly, it probably isn't going to matter that much, because most of this is for carrier's purpose and how they can look into the CSA, and they can look at a driver score and decide whether they want to hire a driver or not. So if you're interested in this stuff, have at it. I am not, but like I said, I feel like it's an important story, and I did want to let you know about it. So if you're interested in that, you weirdo, go to overdriveonline.com and have at it. I would not recommend doing it, however, without plenty of sleep beforehand. Yeesh. Hey, you want to know a way to figure out if something's wrong with your truck so you don't get nailed and your CSA score doesn't go up, or you can get through that weigh station faster? Well, you could become a tire whisperer. And that's kind of what it takes for this next article. overdriveonline.com. This one's called Tire Wear Patterns Telling of Overall Truck Maintenance. Now, I'm going to have you go to the website on this one, click the link in the show notes, because there's all kinds of examples, photos of the different types of wear and tear on trucks or on tires that you're probably going to need to see. Some of these, you're going to recognize the name. Everybody kind of understands like what a cupping tire looks like, but others like thrust scrub angle wear. I've never heard of that one before, but there is if that's happening to your tires, well, first you wouldn't know if You didn't know what it was and what it looked like, so that's why you need to go over here. So anyway, these go into more detail, but I'm just going to kind of summarize a few of these. If you see diagonal wear, like a diagonal bald strip across your tire, that is a sign of something weird going on with your drivetrain. They say that could be worn or improperly adjusted bearings, differing tire diameters on the same hub. It could be mismatched inflation, that kind of thing. How about this thrust scrub angle wear? Yeah, I still not really sure what they're talking about here. It looks kind of like on maybe like the inside of the tire, there's more tread, and on the outside of the tire, there's less tread. That's kind of what it looks like, but I'm not really sure. Have a look at the photo over here and check it out yourself. But if this is happening, it's caused because the truck is out of alignment. Basically, what's happening here is the drive axles are attempting to thrust the truck out of line because, well, it's out of alignment, and the driver's constantly having to correct this with the steering wheel. So that is what causes this kind of weird wear. Interesting. I haven't seen that one near as much as some of these other ones. Anyway, there's a lot more on that one if you're interested. The next one is sidewall damage. Now that's usually, of course, from, rubbing up against it with something or, rubbing up against the curb. Of course, the best way to fix that is just don't hit stuff with your tires. Feather wear. This one you probably have to look at if you don't know what that means. It's kind of like, it's kind of raised a little bit, kind of wavy in a way. It's, well, like I said, look at the photo. This article here says a technician can actually tell what's going on with the truck if they put their hands on the tire. So basically if they put their hands and their fingers on them a little bit and feel them around a little bit and, smooth talk them a little bit and say, hey, baby, come on, tire, tell me what you know. Yeah. But if they do that, they can kind of figure out what's going on. Usually this has something to do with like toe in or toe out, meaning, like, are the two tires facing directly forward? Are they kind of facing away from each other? Like one's pointing a little bit to the left, one's pointing a little bit right, which I believe is called toe out. Is that right? Someone correct me who actually knows this. And toe in would be if both of those front, the tires are actually pointing towards the center of the lane just a little bit. And that will cause feathering. Another thing you can tell by the wear of the tire is the camber. Now, camber is the outward or inward tilt of a tire. So think about it like a tire being straight up and down, and outward would be if the top of the tire was leaning a little towards the outside. Inward tilt would be a little bit towards the in, and the tire wear on that tire will show you. So if the inside of the tire is a little bit more worn, it shows you that tire is leaning a little bit to the inside. Now, ideally, you want to be straight up and down on that so they can adjust that if that becomes a problem and your tires start wearing weird. And cupping is probably the term that you recognize the most. Even a moron like me recognizes that term. Cupping is just like it's just uneven and worn out all over the place, but it's completely unsteady. There's no pattern on it. It's just looks warped. And that is caused from an up and down motion, basically because the tire is not keeping good contact with the road surface. This is often caused by like a bad shock or bad air springs, or the suspension system is just not adjusted right, and it'll cause the tire to bounce up and down as it travels down the road, and that's what causes that cupping. Flat spotting is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a bald spot across, that runs evenly across the wear of all of the treads. And of course, we all know what that's caused by. Some yard guy who is a little too anxious and pulls a truck out of a dock and takes off while those tires are locked up for whatever reason. Maybe the air hasn't reached those brakes yet and released it. Maybe they're frozen in the cold weather. Whatever it is, they're just dragging it along. So that can happen. Or, maybe if something locks up on you while you're driving down the road, you're going to get those. I remember one time I had some back tires on my back trailer. I was pulling doubles and the back trailer locked up. Of course, I was in construction at the time, so I couldn't just pull over. As soon as I I got to the side of the road, and of course by then, big old bald spots on it. This flat spotting, what they're called. So anyway, like I said, go and check out all these pictures and read more in detail, and maybe you too can become a tire whisperer. Check this one out on overdriveonline.com. Okay, so on this one, well, we've spoken about in the past how, many of the listeners here on this show like the old format better, where I tell a story or, it's something funny that I come up with, and I don't do that near as much anymore. I do apologize. But if you like that kind of writing, you're going to want to head over here to landline.media. This one is called Confessions of a Self-Driving Truck, and it's written from the perspective of a self-driving truck. It's an article written by John Bindell, I think is the way you pronounce his name, but it's pretty short, but it's humorous. It's got some relevant things that we all kind of make fun of autonomous trucks. So go and check this one out. You won't be disappointed. Good stuff there, Mr. Bindell. That's awesome. Okay, this next story I honestly thought would be way more interesting than it actually is. I thought it would have some relevance to all of you, but it doesn't, but I've already got it in the queue, so I'm just going to talk about it anyway because, well, it could be relevant. This one I found on thetrucker.com. ATRI launches survey to understand impacts of marijuana legalization. So, of course, the ATRI is the American Transportation Research Institute, and they are the ones doing this survey, but unfortunately, it is not for us. I thought it was, so I thought we'd be able to weigh in on this subject, but alas, it is not. It is mainly for motor carriers and, people who own trucking companies, things like that, who are making the decisions on how to deal with all the drug testing and things like that. So, hey, like we knew they were going to be talking about marijuana more in the future. They have to. It's becoming legal in so many states now. They're going to have to address it and try to figure out ways to work with the trucking industry on that. I don't know that they're going to have to come up with some new test that just is able to tell if you've just been smoking recently, kind of like the alcohol test. It can tell if you're drunk now, or if were drunk, 12 hours ago, it probably won't even know you were drunk 12 hours ago. But, with marijuana, it sticks in your system for a long time. So until they figure that out, well, this is what this survey is all about. So I hope they figure that out because, well, that problem is a-coming. Check this one out on thetrucker.com. Or don't if you're not an owner of any kind. Boy, that was a waste of podcast space, wasn't it? And the last story today, honestly, when I read the title, I thought this probably has something to do with marijuana. But again, I was wrong. Found this one on cdllife.com. Trucker to receive $500,000 for wrongful loitering arrest while making delivery and eating muffins. Yep, this really happened. This was in the San Bernardino area of California, of course, because, well, all things weird happen in California, right? So anyway, this guy named Tommy Franks Jr., he parked his rig behind the building at the loading dock where, at the supermarket where he was delivering, and he went inside, bought him some muffins. As he's walking back to his truck, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies tried to stop Franks to question him. Now, this is how you get yourself in trouble. Franks did not respond to that well. First off, I don't know why the cops are bothering of a guy just walking along eating muffins. I've not figured that one out. But in this case, they asked him what he was doing, and he just responded, walking. Well, that's a smart aleck comment. So, of course, the officers are going to come after you a little bit more. They asked for identification. He refused, said he was being illegally detained. Then, of course, he was placed under arrest for loitering, despite, having the manifest in his hand, saying he was delivering there and everything. And to cap it all off, he even had a uniform with the logo matching the logo on the semi truck. So, for Pete's sake, what are they thinking? But I guess Frank's at this point is already arrested, so he starts really being belligerent. He asks the officers, hey, how can I be loitering if I'm walking? Well, I don't know if that's a fair question. You can be loitering around a parking lot, just walking around, I guess. He asked to speak to a supervisor many times and was not allowed to. And the cops say that Frank's was being hostile. Sounds like to me he was just being a smart aleck. But they also said he took a fighting stance, which led to his arrest. Wonder if there's any footage on that one, like a body cam. I kind of doubt it. Probably why he was, not only let go, but awarded $500,000 for his wrongful arrest. But smart alecks will be smart alecks, and Frank's was not done yet. As the deputy put him into the car, he said, is it hard to breathe with your head that far up your ass? So, the cop got pissed, grabbed his beanie off his head in response, and Frank spent the night in jail. Well, I guess that was a well-spent night in jail because, hey, $500,000. Wow. So anyway, I usually like to have a moral of the story, but I don't think I have one here. I just thought that was a funny story and thought I'd share it with you to end the news segment. There you have it. Read the full story at cdllife.com. Well, that's going to do it for the news this time around. We should be having a Trucker Grub segment right about now, but, well, let me just read you a little exchange we had in the Trucker Dump Slack group. This one comes from Sean, who goes by Gear Driven over there. He writes, I found a great candidate for the Trucker Grub segment, but I don't do voice recording things. If someone in here would be willing to read a script, I'll let you take credit for it. And driver Chris Mack wrote, send it. I'm used to the embarrassment. I've sent Todd so many Trucker Grubs it doesn't bother me anymore. And of course, you know me. I responded, don't be a wuss, Gear Driven. He says, you can't guilt me or shame me into breaking my anonymity. 6 days later, I finally did what I said I'll do. Wow. Way to go there, Sean. So apparently driver Chris Mack has this in his possession now, but I don't have it in my possession yet. So we'll have to wait, hopefully, until next week. Get on it, driver Chris Mack. That is, of course, unless we can get Sean to do it, but, since he's being a quiet little baby, you can't go and record another segment for the podcast. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait on Chris. How's that for guilt, man? Come on, Sean, you giant wuss. All right. But anyway, we do have listener feedback. So let's get on with that. Sean. Pathetic.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Okay, to start out, let's go ahead and hit the depressing one. That's from Andrew Farmer. Now, Andrew's a longtime listener, and he's a chef at a restaurant and lives in the Clemson area. He's been a longtime listener to the show, but not a trucker. But hey, I welcome it. Happy to have you, Andrew. He writes, sorry to hear about Shannon passing away. I remember his name from the chat group and probably traded a few words with him then. I know what you mean about friends online and losing them, and 56 years old is young. I just lost my mom in August. She was 65. Hope you enjoyed your time in North Carolina. Beautiful area. Andrew in Clemson. Well, thank you for the email, Andrew. Yes, Shannon, man, the more, just every once in a while, he just pops in my head, and I don't know why, but probably because, you get to that age where, you still think you're young, but then you have friends passing away unexpectedly, and it's just, man, not cool. Can't describe it well enough. But anyway, sorry to hear about your mom there, Andrew. That's not good. 65 is far too young for your mom. As far as North Carolina, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting over there, running around in the state for a little while because I couldn't seem to get out of it. And, well, I finally made it home, but it was 2 long trips to get home from there. So anyway, like I said, Andrew, thanks for writing in, sharing your thoughts and your memories on Shannon Holden. And speaking of the Slack group, let's jump over to Gordon Wilson. He writes, Hello, just started listening to the podcast and I love it. Awesome, Gordon. He says, I'm hoping to become a truck driver in the next year or so. I'd love to join the Slack group as I have lots of questions. Thanks. Well, thank you, Gordon. We're happy to have you in there. I don't recall if you've said anything in there or not. A lot of people jump into the Trucker Dump Slack group and then they just don't get into it right away. They don't know where to start, or they just feel a little left out. We try to include you when we see you come in. If we don't, just start yapping. We'll realize you're there. So thanks for writing in, Gordon. Thanks for joining the Trucker Dump Slack group. Next, let's hear from Dave, who goes by the name Mohican in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Dave's last name is Wiedemann. Am I saying that right, Dave? Because the only experience I have with anything spelled anywhere close to this is a really bad beer we used to buy when we were broke. And Wiedemann tasted pretty good going down, but it was not pretty on the way out, if you know what I mean. So he writes, hey, sorry if I'm sending too many random comments, but I thought of another thing to mention. Well, first off, Dave, there is no such thing as too many random comments. I love them. I like these little ones, especially because, it's a nice way to fill in gaps in the feedback segment. So anyway, he goes on one of the recent podcasts, I recall you mentioning that someone thought the intro to the feedback section said, yo, but for the longest time, I thought it said, yo, bud, where do you want this load of beef at? It says somehow it took a while to figure out that beef at was actually feedback. And then it made more sense. Yeah. Yeah, I would tend to do that, Mohican. Oh, that's awesome. I had no idea when I had those recorded that this was going to cause so much feedback in the future, between that one and the one where my nephew Jake at the end is saying, Todd doesn't know what he's doing. He does have a bit of a speech impediment because of his, he's partially deaf, and we just thought it was cuter than heck when he did that into my phone. If you haven't heard the story of that, I was working on my podcast. He was about 8 years old at the time, I think, and he was messing around with my phone and, bugging me like they normally did while I was working on the podcast, and I was recording and stuff, and he looked down at what I was doing, and I guess I didn't hear him do it at the time, but he had the voice recorder on my phone and he said, Todd doesn't know what he's doing. And well, it proves out that he was correct. So anyway, there's the story behind that. If you haven't heard it before, I know I've told it before, but if you're a new listener, maybe you hadn't heard that story before. So now Jake has a lower voice than me, so it wouldn't sound the same if he said Todd doesn't know what he's doing. So maybe sometime I'll get him to record that and we'll put that on there. That'll be a little Easter egg for those of you who bother to listen to the end of the show and the bloopers that go along with it. So thank you, Dave Wiedemann, Mohican, for writing in. I appreciate it. And we've got another one from Dave in the next episode, probably. I'm waiting on some feedback from another gentleman to help me out with a segment that I think you're going to want to be here for. So make sure you don't miss the next episode or two. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to come out, but it's going to probably be pretty humorous. And lastly, let's hear from a gentleman whose name seems familiar. John Holsing. Why do I know that name? Oh, yeah, it's because I trained him at my job. Well, I think he's got more trucking experience than I do. I know he's got a much more well-rounded trucking career than I do, for sure, all kinds of stuff. But I was his mentor at our job. I rode along with John for, he rode with me for 3 days. No, I rode with him. He did most of the driving. John and I got along great. We still talk on the phone quite a bit, but he writes in here. He says, hey, Toddles, just listening to the most recent podcast. We'll get back to that in a second. He says, if you are ever interested in the truck driving school debate from the perspective of a former driving instructor, give me a shout. Talk to you later, John. Well, we did talk later, and John does have a unique perspective on the whole truck driving school thing. We've talked about that a lot lately with CC writing or send those audio comments talking about truck driving school. And, well, like I say, John's got kind of a unique perspective on it coming from a driver instructor, especially the private schools, compared to the company sponsored schools. So maybe we'll get John on the show sometime when we can both slow down long enough to record a segment. Now for the Toddles thing. I made the mistake of, well, if anybody knows me in person, they know I often tell way too much about my life and it gets me in trouble. And this is one of those cases where I mention that a girl that I really had a crush on in like junior high, she called me Toddles. Her name was Joe Glover. Joe, if you're listening, I found you very hot and you know that. But, yes, she called me Toddles and I did not mind because it was Joe Glover. Let's be honest, So John picked up on that immediately and, he really likes to call me that. I don't know why. Because he's mean, like everybody else who I talk to on the line every night that I work with. All right, John, we'll talk to you later. I know you're listening. And I hope you had another wonderful, typical 800-mile day. Yeah, John's on the agriculture exemption. So there you have that. Oh, crap. Man, I nearly forgot you there, Matt McKellar. Goes by Mountain Matt in the Trucker Dump Slack group. He wrote a comment that I snipped out of the Trucker Dump Slack group here about company-sponsored training. He writes, I went through company-sponsored training as well and generally found the training to be decent. I appreciated the pay, the intensive format, and the built-in job. There was a bit of a sense of the trainer just using me to pad his miles, especially after I was at a basic level of competency. I had ended up leaving before my year-long contract was complete, but I did the math and realized I would make up for the penalty fee in relatively short time, given how much more the new job paid. I hadn't planned on leaving so early, but I couldn't pass up on a good opportunity, which has worked out quite well. I make almost double in my new job and enjoy the work and pay structure much more. Awesome, Matt. Yeah, we walked through Matt's entire training process with him while he was going through the school and when he was going through the actual training with his trainer. And yeah, we heard all about it, and his trainer was definitely using him in that regard. Sounds like the guy was an okay guy, but he certainly was using Matt. That training went on far longer than it should have because he was taking lots of time off and just using him as a team driver. Lots of sitting around too. So yeah, that was probably not the best experience, but that's what you get sometimes. Sometimes you have an excellent experience and sometimes you have horrible experience. I was lucky, had great experience. The Evil Overlord, not so much. If you've never heard those stories, check out the book Trucking Life. You can find that on abouttruckdriving.com, or you can buy it anywhere else you buy your ebooks. So anyway, thanks to everyone for writing in. I do appreciate it. If you would like to get your voice heard on a future episode, please send me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com. Comments about the show, past episode, comments about something I've said on a news story. Maybe it's something I've actually asked for feedback on, that, like the CB radio thing that I was talking about earlier. Maybe you just want to tell me about your career. Maybe you just want to tell me about your truck driving school experience. We always love good stories about wrecks and something you learn from that, or an incident that, maybe with another driver that you could give some advice on, or something like that. Something humorous, something serious, whatever it is, send it to me at truckerdump@gmail.com. And of course, audio comments always get priority. It's super easy. Open up your phone. There's going to be a voice memo app in there somewhere. Turn the truck off, please, and then record. Try to keep it around 3 minutes or less, but if it's a little longer and that's what you need to get your story out, do it by all means. As you've figured out, sometimes this show is short, sometimes this show is long, and it doesn't matter one bit. To me, or you, as I've asked many times, if you mind long episodes, and you do not. So I assume if you do mind long episodes, you're skipping the crap you don't like anyway. So hopefully that's not the whole show. All right, let's say we get on out of here. I hope you have a great week. I hope the weather is not affecting you at all. Well, yeah, good luck with that. But hey, try to keep it safe out there. Keep the shiny side up, as they say. And we'll talk to you next week. Crank up the jams. Guess what? This professional podcaster finally got the website fixed so it's easier to contribute to the show, whether that be through buying the ebooks, using the Amazon affiliate link, or giving a one-time donation, or even a monthly donation like Mountain Matt started recently. Thanks, Matt. And by the way, if money ever gets tight, you can stop whenever you like. I have no expectations here, seriously. I won't be holding a grudge or anything like that. Do what you gotta do. So, here's what to do. Go to abouttruckdriving.com and click Help the Show in the menu bar. Everything is right there. So as always, I appreciate you listening every single week and following. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. We got a crap ton of new states. Or giving a one-time donation or even a monthly donation like Mountain Matt's. Or giving a one-time donation or even a monthly donation. Or giving a one-time donation or even a monthly donation like Mountain Matt started. Next, let's hear from Mohican. Next, So, of course, the ATRI is the American Transportation Research Institute. I think I have trouble with that every dang time.